What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the State of the Program series, which you can find on the Crossover U College Hoops Talk podcast. My name is Kanaye. I'm joined with Josh, and today we are going to be talking about the state of the Arkansas Razorbacks program. Really solid year in Coach Calipari's first year with his new home in Arkansas. I definitely think they were really underwhelming in SEC play throughout the season, but they surprised a lot of people, being able to go on a little bit of a run in the NCAA tournament, making it into the second weekend after upsetting St. John's in the second round and going down to the wire with Texas Tech, losing in overtime to them. But they've lost some guys, they've added some guys. We're going to talk all about that. We're going to talk about how we feel about Coach Cal going into this year and just what the vibes are for Arkansas going into SEC play and just how we think they stack up nationally going into this next season. But before we get into that, if you like this podcast or anything else you see on this channel, please engage with our content any way you can. It really does help with being able to influence YouTube's algorithm and just grow what we do here at the Crossover. So let's get started with what Arkansas has lost. I think losing your number one scorer from the past season, Adu Thero, definitely hurts a lot. You're also losing Boogie Flan with the portals now with Florida. Lose Nelly Davis, Big Zia Visage, definitely hurts too, losing him to Illinois. You also lose Jonas Adu, who was really solid at stretch throughout this past year. And then you lose a few guys like Casimir Chavez, Melo Sanchez, Aiden Kelly, who were in smaller roles, but definitely could have contributed if they were able to keep those guys around, if they had any eligibility left.
Yeah, I do think it's not the worst loss. Losing a guy like Adu Thero, which he was considering coming back, I think it's a little rough. Boogie Flan was in the portal, transferred to Florida, but it came back. Davis was done. Visage transferred with his brother. Chris Adu was kind of an up-in-the-air type of guy as well, but he pretty much wanted to go to the NBA. It's not horrible, but you are losing your top three scorers, and I think that kind of does hurt a little bit.
Right.
Cal's used to this stuff. Cal typically loses his top guys. I kind of want to give this, you think a 6 or a 7? I'm kind of leaning towards a 7.
I lean towards a 7 too, just because I think Cal normally always does a really good job of reloading. And at the same time, I think he also tends to recruit over guys he's previously had. That's kind of what's happened with Boogie Flan this past year. Zavonimir Visage, kind of the same deal. Nelly Davis was out of eligibility. I know Jonas Adu was definitely, or not Adu Thero was definitely a guy they could have gotten back and probably should have. But, of course, he hit the draft. But I don't hold it completely against Cal and Arkansas for losing him. I think a 7 would probably be fair.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty smart choice.
Now, to get into what Arkansas has added, I think the number one thing, as per usual with Coach Cal, is the freshman. He's bringing in 4 top 100 guys. Those guys being Darius Acuff, who's number 7, he's going to run point for them. Willie Thomas, who's 10. Paulo Samito, who's number 50, and Isaiah Sealy, who's number 68. They're also bringing in 2 international freshmen, Kareem Ratale and Elmir Stafik, who, again, if I pronounce your names wrong, I do apologize. But on top of that, you also bring back guys like DJ Wagner, Carter Knox, Trayvon Brazil, Billy Richmond III. You're also bringing in 2 transfers, Malik Ewan, who was really solid at Florida State this past year, and Nick Pringle, who had success at Alabama before a little bit of a down year at South Carolina this past year. But overall, I think he's done a really good job of reloading this roster. And, I would probably have the additions around a 7 or 8, maybe even lean a little bit more towards 7.
I'm also leaning towards 7. This is not the super convincing increase. Cuff being stolen was definitely a big win. Blake Thomas is also a big win too, and the international prospects are not to be overlooked. Cal put a lot of effort to finding these guys. The portal's a little bit underwhelming. I get it, he doesn't really use the portal. In this day and age, you kind of have to. Pringle's a good get, though. Pringle's a really good get. He has a ton of SEC knowledge. He's gonna want to use him a lot at Arkansas. And there are definitely a lot of questions with the starting line. Carter Knox and Billy Richmond are definitely returners, would say. Carter Knox and Billy Richmond are definitely guys that have high ceilings, but I'm not sure where they're going to reach it. And while DJ Wagner is expected to have a breakout season in his junior year, he's kind of like the SEC version of Elliot Cadeau, and we've had our talks about Cadeau in the past. I'm not saying Wagner's a one-to-one copy, but I'm not really convinced with Wagner being the main guy on this team. In fact, I don't think there is a main guy on this team that sticks out to me, which is why I think a 7 is the right score.
Yeah, I definitely like your point of DJ Wagner almost being like the SEC's version of Elliot Cadeau, where you're kind of just waiting on the year where he breaks out. We're going on year 3 of that now. But nonetheless, I definitely think that Wagner should be in a better situation. He knows largely what Calipari wants. Calipari is always going to stay loyal to the guys who stick it out with him. Kind of same boat Carter Knox is in. But yeah, I think 7 would probably be a fair score. Now I think it's time to get into what we think the starting lineup is going to be for Arkansas this next upcoming year. Me and Josh have decided on a lineup of Darius Acuff, Malik Thomas, TJ Wagner, Carter Knox, and Malik Ewan. It is a little bit of a smaller lineup than what Calipari normally runs, but I just think in terms of the personnel he has on the roster this year, I feel like those pieces just fit together the best of any type of combination you could have made out of the guys on this roster this year.
Yeah, and there's a ton of different options. We know it's Callis who's going to want to use his freshman, but honestly, Nick Pringle deserves a start. Richmond can start. Brazil can start. This team is filled with starters. It's just where the guys who play on the bench are and how they interact with the rest of the roster. That's kind of the big deal here because this is one of the top teams here with a roster that I don't fully feel convinced with on who's starting and who's playing off the bench.
Right. Most definitely. And to get into how we feel about Coach Calipari going into next year for coaching. I'm personally not very high on Coach Cal whatsoever. I very much feel that he really didn't change all too much from how he was running his program at Kentucky. He just doesn't make enough in-game adjustments. While it was really impressive, I do feel that their kind of little run in the tournament this past year was somewhat fluky. He ran into a St. John's team that really wasn't great offensively, and I think that kind of worked to Arkansas's benefit. And then when in March Madness, really anything can happen. I think you just got into a wire-to-wire game with Texas Tech, and you were able to make it close. But again, you kind of are in a situation with Cal where he largely is what he is. I don't think he's ever going to change. He's come out and publicly said he's never going to change how he runs his program, how he coaches in games. Considering that, I honestly kind of have coaching at a 6.
I kind of have viewed him a little bit better. He's not fully washed, in my opinion, but he's definitely not for this age. We're looking at a ton of other new style coaches. When we talk about new coaches that have moved in from last year, and we had a conversation with this on in our Louisville talk you can watch it earlier. We just made. He's not one of the new good coaches. I'm going to be honest. Arkansas didn't really look too good. They honestly had a path to a sneaky Elite Eight, Final Four even, but don't put me on that. I'm not super convinced by him, and even recent conversations have kind of put me off. He recently had a saying that he only wanted 8 guys on his roster. I think that's very almost childish when you try and produce such a honestly awkward team. Bunch of freshmen, very few transfers, a couple guys that stuck around and were drafted or whatever. Not a team that works in this world right now. This is the NIL and the transfer portal world. It doesn't really work. I kind of want a 7. I feel like this season feels a lot better than last year. And I think Cal can definitely lead them, but the ceiling isn't. Sweet 16, maybe lead it at most.
Yeah, I'm willing to come up to a 7. Maybe I was a little harsh on Cal, but I definitely do think that I kind of agree with your point that the roster and just makeup of everything going into this year does maybe look a little bit better than last year. So I'm willing to go up to a 7 for that. Now to get into the conference, how we're rating them there, where do you view Arkansas heading into SEC play for this upcoming year?
I kind of see them as the third option. I get it. We have Florida and we have Kentucky. We do have Bama, and we do have a team in Auburn who can also compete in that spot. But Arkansas feels like in that middle of the pack runner. They feel like a team that can be anywhere between a 3 and a 6 seed come tournament time. They could fall, they could rise. It's really hard to tell. Cal's teams are super streaky, and Arkansas last year was a sign of that. That almost felt out a month before the tournament, came back in range, performed pretty well at the end of the season. Unsure that it is, but the SEC is rough. It is going to be another complete smasher. Could be 14 teams all over again. This is the hardest conference. I'll give it an 8. I think that he will learn the SEC the way he always has. This has always been where he's been honestly the best with his coaching. I'm never really a big fan of him in non-conference, but him in the SEC, he knows how it works. I trust him in Rupp. I trust him in, honestly, most other arenas alongside Arkansas itself. I just think that the SEC is his battleground, but don't call me on saying Arkansas is going to be anything better than the third best team. There's a ceiling. There's a ceiling.
Yeah, no, I'm also willing to go up to an 8 for that because it is the SEC. They look like they could end up being the best conference in the country head to toe once again this year. When you're opening up as the top 3-4 team in the preseason and that going into the conference play, I think that does speak a lot. There's going to be so much opportunity for resume building, quad one wins that you're going to be playing in. And yeah, like you mentioned, Coach Cal normally does figure out the SEC. He walked into Rupp Arena this past year in his return game to Kentucky and won. Like you mentioned, he's been around for a long time. He knows how the SEC works. He knows how to win in the SEC. It's just going to come down to largely what he's able to make out of the roster he's put together. But I think an 8 would probably be a fair score to give there.
Yeah.
Now, heading up, in terms of vibes in Arkansas going into this next season, how do you feel Arkansas Razorback fans are feeling?
There's a lot of emotions. Let's be real with you. Arkansas's always had a lot of emotions going into a new season. There's a lot of hope. This team looks really nice. They've showed so well in the offseason. This is one of the better offseason winner teams. I can't say, though, that this is better than a Musselman offseason. Like, there are so many offseasons where it's like, at least in the Musselman years, that it felt like he's got it. He's like, there was so, like, the vibes were there. Cal doesn't have the vibes. Cal had the vibes of Kentucky, but everyone views him as washed and old, and, there really is so much you can get out of it. I'm not saying Arkansas is a bad fan set. I like Arkansas fans. They've always shown well. They're always going to pack the hog house. You can't really ignore them. But I'm not really high if I were an Arkansas fan on next season. I kind of want to give it 6. I feel like that might be a little too low.
Yeah, no, I'm not against giving them a 6. I very much feel that the emotions are so mixed if you're a Razorbacks fan. On one hand, you do have Coach Cal, who has proven to be able to win, granted a long time ago at this point at Kentucky. And he has put together a quite compatible roster that does have a chance to make some noise in the SEC and go on a run in March. But at the same time, you just don't know. We don't know if Cal really has any sort of that magic left. And it's really relying on how good your freshman backcourt is between Darius Acuff and Malik Thomas. Are those guys going to have no ego? Are they going to buy into what Cal wants them to do? Are they going to do the little things? Are they going to play make for others, put their teammates in the right positions to score, and just succeed as a team? And you just don't know that. So I do think there's a lot of uncertainty, but the talent is undeniable. I'm not against going 6 there.
Yeah, I think it's just a fair thing to say. Could be really good, but the question marks on this team, it's the biggest ones we've given for any top 10 team here.
Most definitely. So I think that's going to wrap up everything we have today on the state of the Arkansas Razorback program. Really could go either way for this team this year. A lot of it's going to be dependent on Cal. A lot of it's going to be dependent on his 5-star freshman, which he always loves to bring in. But pretty much, we're here for it. We're here for the ride with Cal this year. I'm excited to see what he's able to do. But again, as always, if you engage with our videos in any way you can, it really does go a long way. And until that next episode, we'll see you all next time.